Imagine standing on the summit of a lonely mountain more than 1,000 years ago. The horizon stretches endlessly in every direction. There are no satellites in the sky, no airplanes, no telescopes powerful enough to see the Earth from space. To everyone around you, the true size of the world is still a mystery. Yet one man believed that the answer was already hidden in the landscape before him. He believed that a mountain, a few simple instruments, and the language of mathematics were enough to solve one of humanity's greatest mysteries. How big is the Earth? It sounds impossible. Even today, most people would assume such a measurement requires satellites, advanced computers, or years of surveying across continents. But nearly 1,000 years before the first rocket ever left our planet, a Muslim scholar came astonishingly close to the correct answer. His name was Abu Rayhan Muhammad ibn Ahmad al-Biruni. Although history remembers names like Galileo, Newton, and Einstein, far fewer people know the scholar who measured the Earth with extraordinary accuracy centuries before the scientific revolution. This is not only the story of a brilliant scientist, it is the story of curiosity, patience, and the courage to trust evidence over assumption. Our story begins in the year 973 in the ancient region of Khwarezm, in what is now Uzbekistan. At the crossroads of great civilizations, merchants carried silk, spices, books, and ideas across deserts and mountains. Knowledge traveled alongside trade, and libraries became treasures as valuable as gold. It was into this world that al-Biruni was born. From childhood, he asked questions that many adults ignored. Why do the stars move? Why do shadows change during the day? How can people understand something they cannot see? While others accepted the world as it appeared, al-Biruni wanted proof. He learned mathematics, astronomy, geometry, and languages with remarkable speed. But unlike many scholars of his time, he never believed that old ideas were correct simply because respected people had written them. For al-Biruni, every claim had to be tested. Observation came before opinion. Evidence came before tradition. And mathematics became the tool that allowed him to read the hidden patterns of Allah's creation. Years passed. His reputation spread across the Islamic world. Rulers welcomed him into their courts. Scholars debated him. Libraries opened their collections to him. But among all the questions he explored, one refused to leave his mind. How large is the Earth? For centuries, philosophers had proposed answers. Some guessed, some estimated. Others attempted enormous surveys across deserts that required years of travel. Al-Biruni wondered whether there was another way. A method so elegant that a single mountain might reveal the answer. That al-Biruni knew that the greatest discoveries often begin with the simplest questions. Instead of traveling across entire continents like earlier scholars, he looked toward a mountain. To most people, it was nothing more than a towering mass of rock. To al-Biruni, it was a scientific instrument waiting to be used. His first challenge was to determine the mountain's exact height. Using geometry and careful observations from two different locations on level ground, he measured the angles to the mountain's summit. With mathematics, he calculated its height with remarkable precision. Only then did the real experiment begin. He climbed to the very top. Standing on the summit, he looked toward the distant horizon where the Earth seemed to disappear into the sky. Most people would simply admire the view. Al-Biruni saw something else. He noticed that the horizon did not sit perfectly level with his eyes. It appeared slightly lower. That tiny angle, so small that most people would never notice it, held the answer to one of humanity's oldest questions. Using a precision instrument, he carefully measured the angle between the horizontal line at eye level and the visible horizon. The measurement was incredibly small, but in mathematics, even the smallest angle can reveal an enormous truth. Back in his study, al-Biruni combined two pieces of information: the exact height of the mountain and the tiny angle between his eye and the horizon. With the principles of geometry and trigonometry, he imagined the Earth as a perfect sphere. The mountain became one point. The horizon became another. Together, they formed a giant geometric puzzle. Patiently, step by step, he solved it, His calculations revealed the radius of the Earth. From that radius, the planet's circumference could also be determined. The astonishing part was not simply that the method worked. It was how little equipment he needed. No armies of surveyors. No years of crossing deserts. No imposible yernis. One mountain, one brilliant mind, and mathematics. Centuries later, modern scientists compared Al-Biruni's calculation with measurements made using advanced instruments and satellites. The result amazed historians. His estimate differed from today's accepted value by only a very small margin. For a man working more than 1,000 years ago, the accuracy was extraordinary. It was one of the greatest scientific achievements of the medieval world. Yet Al-Biruni himself never celebrated it as a personal victory. For him, every discovery was another step toward understanding the order that Allah had placed within his creation. The universe was not random. It could be observed, measured, understood, and that belief would guide the rest of his remarkable life. The number before Al-Biruni was more than a mathematical result. It was proof that the earth could be measured without sailing around it. Proof that careful observation, combined with mathematics, could uncover truths that seemed impossible to reach. His estimate of the Earth's radius was astonishingly close to the value accepted by modern science. More than 1,000 years later, satellites would confirm just how remarkable his work had been. But Al-Biruni was never satisfied with a single discovery. To him, every answer led to another question. His curiosity carried him far beyond astronomy. He studied mathematics, geography, physics, medicine, minerals, calendars, and history. He measured the density of precious stones, observed eclipses, calculated the positions of stars, and wrote about subjects that few scholars of his age could even imagine studying together. Perhaps one of his greatest achievements was not a scientific instrument or mathematical formula. It was the way he studied other people. When Al-Biruni traveled to the Indian subcontinent, he refused to judge its people from a distance. Instead, he learned Sanskrit so he could read their books in their original language. He met their scholars. He asked questions. He compared ideas instead of mocking them. Then he wrote one of history's most detailed studies of Indian religion, science, philosophy, geography, and culture. In an age when many people misunderstood foreign civilizations, Al-Biruni believed that knowledge began with listening before judging. That attitude made him centuries ahead of his time. He often reminded fellow scholars that truth should never depend on pride or tradition. If new evidence appeared, a scientist must be willing to change his conclusion. For Al-Biruni, the search for truth was greater than the desire to be right. Over his lifetime, he wrote well over 100 works. Some have been lost to history. Others survived, inspiring generations of scholars across the Islamic world and, later, Europe. Many ideas that shaped astronomy, geography, and mathematics were built upon foundations laid by thinkers like him. Yet outside universities and history books, his name remains surprisingly unknown. Perhaps that is why his story deserves to be told. Not because he sought fame, but because he reminds us what a single curious mind can achieve. Standing on a mountain over 1,000 years ago, Al-Biruni looked toward the horizon. Where others saw only distance, he saw question. Where others saw uncertainty, he saw mathematics. And where others accepted mystery, he searched for evidence. His story is more than the story of measuring the earth. It is the story of a man who believed that Allah's creation was filled with signs waiting to be understood by those willing to observe carefully, think deeply, and seek knowledge with sincerity. More than 1,000 years have passed. Satellites now orbit the Earth. Spacecraft travel beyond our planet. Yet the lesson Al-Biruni left behind has never changed. Great discoveries do not begin with powerful machines. They begin with curiosity. And sometimes, all it takes to change history is one mountain,